decision involved a mine worker who applied for a couple of days of annual leave, which was over 2 night shifts because it was a night worker. The leave request was refused on the basis that there were too many people already taking annual leave on those occasions. The worker said to his manager, "If you don't give me leave on those days, I'll take personal leave." He did, it turned out, become sick and take personal leave on those days, and he was terminated on the basis of, his employment was terminated on the basis of dishonesty and a breakdown in the employment relationship. He brought an adverse action case alleging that one of the reasons for the termination was him exercising his right to take personal leave. But he was unsuccessful in that because the court found that that wasn't the reason that the leave was taken, that the action to terminate his employment was taken. Rather, the action was taken because the employer believed that he'd acted dishonestly, and a breakdown in his in the trust and confidence between the employer and the employee.
What was interesting was that one of the judges in the case actually, at the conclusion of his decision, found that he was concerned that it was an unfair outcome because the employee was actually sick. He wasn't, off faking it or just taking a sickie. He was legitimately sick, and he found that it was somewhat unfair, but he couldn't find anything other than the fact that it was an adverse action. The judge did find that a better course of action for him would have been to file unfair dismissal proceedings, where it would have been inevitable that he would have been reinstated because it was unfair, but ultimately it was an adverse action.
And I think, one of the important things with adverse action or unfair dismissal, it's about what was in the mind of the employer at the time that they terminated. So even though, later other things may have been found out, that's a really important thing for employers to know. Another important point of the case, which isn't strictly relevant to the case, but is that, employers can refuse annual leave to staff on basis such as there's already too many people taking leave and I need someone to cover the shift. Whereas a lot of employers are sometimes hesitant to do that, thinking that employees have the right to take annual leave whenever they want.
What was also interesting was that the court found that if he hadn't actually threatened that he was going to go and be sick and get a medical certificate, and he just took it without any conversation beforehand, the employer would have had no action because they couldn't have proven otherwise.
Yeah.
But the fact that he threatened it and caused the company to lose faith and trust in him was ultimately the reason.
And I suppose that the emphasising the importance before anyone launches into a general protections or an adverse action, that it is what is in the minds of the employer. And if what's in the minds of the employer is completely and utterly incorrect, like in this case, an incorrect view that he's been dishonest, you still are unsuccessful in the case, that it's irrelevant. It's actually what was the reason for the termination. In this case, the reason for the termination was the assumption of dishonesty incorrectly, as it turned out.